Okay, so today we're going to be talking about what's going on with your bees when you find them dead in the snow or maybe piled up on the landing board of your beehive. We're going to visit several hives today. We have 15 in this bee yard. And we're going to look at each landing board, and I'm going to explain what the concerns are, if any. We're also going to collect some honeybees and going to show you how to evaluate them. So this small entrance, this might look very small for a beehive, and it is, and that's because these honeybees in this hive were gathered from a swarm outside of an old house near where I live. So they are doing just fine with a very small entrance so that they can defend themselves in very small numbers. Now you'll notice that there are some dead bees at the entrance, and they fly out often and land in the snow. What should you do when you see your bees laying in the snow like this? Well, for one, the bees that are healthy, the strongest bees that are out there, can fly out and fly back to the landing board. So what should you do when you see a bee doing what's known as a cleansing flight, landing in snow and melting a hole into it, the way this worker is? Also, look at her antennae. They're both pointed down. She's not terribly active. Does not look extremely healthy. So it's not always a good idea to pick up a bee that you find in the snow and put her back on the landing board. They have reasons of their own for departing the hive and not returning. Often that's to protect the other hive mates from disease. Also, bees don't go to the bathroom inside the hive. They need to take advantage of days like this. Temperatures soared up to 49 degrees. And of course, this is in sunshine as well, so they're even warmer than that. And look at this little worker. Her antennae are sticking out. She's a little more alert. She is looking around, but imagine flying out of the darkness of a beehive and into the whiteout of a snow-covered landscape, and with sunshine no less. So often they will land in the snow and just cool off and die, melting a hole deep into the snow. And you'll also see a tan spot in the snow from time to time, and that's because when they landed, they also eliminated, which is part of the reason why they flew out in the first place. They don't go to the bathroom in the hive, so instead they fly out, and sometimes they'll go to the bathroom right on the landing board, and you'll see little tan streaks. So this one may or may not fly off and get back to the landing board. But you're kind of wasting your time if you pick them up and put them back yourself, because more often than not, they fly right off of the landing board again and go away. So this is another beehive we're looking at, and this is a slatted rack that's painted green here. So this worker has come out, and she's just getting up in the sunshine. And look at the entrance here. Now this bottom board has a little berm on the bottom of it, and that's because it is one of the standard Flow-Hive bottom boards that are screened and vented. And this is a drone. So normally the drones are long tossed out by now, so this one's just laying there. This is a Saskatraz bee colony here, and there are a bunch of dead bees. I know this is dramatic. If you're a brand new beekeeper, you might walk out and see a pile of dead bees and think, whoa, I think all my bees died. And then what's the next thing you might want to do? Open up the hive and inspect it to see what's going on in there, why your bees died. And I want to caution you, don't do that. It's wintertime. In fact, some of the least active colonies in your bee yard might be the ones that are wintering over the best. And that's because if they hold their cluster and they stay tight and they don't fly and use up resources, they may actually be getting through winter better than others. So when you see piles of dead bees like this, what's really important is looking at that entrance reducer. You want to be sure that the bees can come and go if it does warm up. And notice that this hive is in the shade. And so the bees that have hives where the landing boards face south in our situation, they're the ones that fly out sooner. They're also the ones that have the cleanest landing boards. So it can make a difference if you're in a colder part of the country, whether your hives are facing south or north. And that can give them a boost on these strange days when it warms up. Today, by the way, is December 27th, and these sequences were filmed during the past week over the Christmas holiday. Now here's another box. that also it has its entry board facing north, so it's in the shade and there's still some ice on it. This was a swarm collected through the year. And here's another swarm box with a slatted rack. And again, this is one of the standard Flow-Hive bottom bases that has a screen in it, and we have core flute that's closed up to the top, so we did limit some of that ventilation there. And you'll also notice there are aluminum screens tucked in. That's to reduce the entrance but allow ventilation through that entrance board. Here's a standard bottom board sitting on a BeeSmart design stand that just happens to be black, made out of recycled plastics. So when the sun hits that, it heats up right away. But again, notice the landing board facing north did not melt down and dry off, but this hive visor is taking the brunt of the snow and has done a great job of protecting that entrance from being completely blocked by snow. And I'm also going to show you in a little bit how we scoop out some of those bees and keep those entrances open. And I'm going to show you what to do with the bees. Here's a hive visor with the snow and ice dripping off of it. And again, you've got dead bees on the landing board. So for me, when I see dead bees peppered out around in front of the landing boards and they're in the snow, I know that that colony is actually still alive. Now this is an 8-frame Flow-Hive 2, and if you notice, it's got a screen blocking most of that landing board entrance. And there's a bee coming back. Now notice, she flew out, did a few roundabouts, did some orienteering, and came back and got right back in. So that shows you that the bees that are landing in the snow and sinking in and that are unable to come back to their hives may not be healthy in the first place. So this is a great opportunity to look at your landing boards and see what the activity is, see what the condition of those bees are. If they seem normal and they're healthy, you can sample some of the dead bees. In fact, it's a great opportunity to do that, and that's what this video is really about. We're going to find out how the Saskatraz bees and the BeeWeaver bees are doing. And of course, we have some unknown genetics here with this swarm collection. And it's easy to tell. I won't be sampling these bees, but I am interested in making the comparison between the BeeWeavers out of Texas and the Saskatraz bees, which were purchased in the spring as packages through Mann Lake, and they come from California. So the bees are coming and going. They're pretty active. We had a strange warm-up during December this year. In fact, today it hit 50 again, but it rained. You can also often see what the physical condition of their wings are. See what the condition of the bee is, if they are suffering any distress or if you suspect disease. Just because they leave little brown streaks does not mean that they have nosema. It does not mean that they're sick. It just means that they went to the bathroom and didn't wait until they flew completely clear of the hive before they did that. So now also, on the flip side, when you don't see activity at a landing board, that's not necessarily bad news. And when you see a lot of activity, like these bees right here, that's not necessarily good news. Because the active colonies that warm up and move out, they can do some house cleaning and they can definitely do their cleansing flights, but they also will be consuming resources inside the hive. This hive has a single deep brood box, and it also has a medium super on top. Now we're going to go to this 8-frame Flow-Hive 2. I'm going to get some of these bees out of here so we can get a look at them. I also look at the landing board when I'm scraping them out, but remember the Flow-Hives, they have screen bottom boards. This one has an aluminum bottom board with open slats in it so that debris can fall through, but more important than that, parasites also, when they're groomed off, can fall through. So these are BeeWeaver bees in here, and each time I collect dead bees from a colony like this, I put them in a Ziploc baggie, and I have a separate Ziploc baggie for each colony. I don't want to mix them up because I want to know what's going on with each. There's a lot you can learn. And I'm just using Paint Stir 6 that I've modified And again, we're going to get some of these bees out. These are the swarms. And look that they've put propolis along that whole entrance reducer there. Bees do a lot of work to weather seal their hives. And when we break beehives apart this time of year, we're not doing the bees any favors because we're defeating the seals that they've installed on their own. So let's get up in here and get some bees out. And again, like I said, if you're a brand new beekeeper, you might be seeing all of these dead bees and thinking that that's terrible. But remember that the late season foragers are dying out and that winter bees are taking their place. Now this is a Saskatraz colony, and it is in a Flow-Hive too, which also has integrated pest management, a bottom board with open slats. So if they groom them down, they would fall through the slats and the Varroa couldn't rejoin the bees. That's the whole point. And there's a lot of dead bees, but again, the larger the colony, and this colony that I'm sweeping the bees out of was my most productive colony in the entire apiary as far as honey goes this year. So again, it's in a 10 frame size Flow-Hive 2, which has 7 flow frames on it. And a large number of dead bees in the bottom is normal when you have... Oh, the snow just fell off of the roof. I have solar panels, if you don't already know. And of course they're dark. And look, they're heating up in the sun and a big pile of snow just fell off. Now the drip edge of this roof here falls behind the beehives, but because the snow flew out, it landed right on the beehives. So that's kind of a distraction there momentarily. And now we're just going to get some of these bees out. I want to get that drone. I have never found a drone with a Varroa mite attached to it, but we're going to look for them. And again, these slatted racks have a solid entry cover if you look underneath, and if you look up slatted racks, which are supposed to help prevent drafts in winter, help to keep the brood area darker, and supposed to be better for the bees overall. So this is the first winter I'm going through with those slatted racks. Now we're in another Saskatraz colony here, and I can already see that there are some Varroa destructor mites right here on the landing board. You can see them. They're kind of amber colored, kind of shiny little dots there. The rest of it is propolis and stuff, but I'm very interested in getting these bees into the kitchen and on the plates there so I can evaluate them and see what's going on. But this one's got mites for sure. Now the thing is, we did 2 mite treatments in the apiary this year because of the Saskatraz bees. We knew that they might not be able to hold their own when it comes to mites, and the breeders themselves, in the instructions that they send with the bees, say that they may require mite management. So they also are supposed to have some hygienic traits, so they're also supposed to winter really well, which is why I have them and why we're looking them over. So just giving an overview here of the different hives. Every hive now has a visor on it to keep the snow off of that landing board. And remember, the south-facing hives activate first. So let's see what's going on with these bees. So here we are on the kitchen table. Dumped out the bees again, keeping them all separate. So each Ziploc baggie stores the bees from each individual hive that we want to evaluate. And these are just dissection needles that are stainless steel. And we just kind of spread them out. I'm looking to see if there are Varroa mites on the bodies of the bees. And if there are, of course, we're going to photograph. There's a mite right there. Now, does this count as a mite count? In other words, is this how you verify what the mite load is on your colony of bees? No, it is not. So for those of you who may see a bunch of mites now, when you get a bunch of dead bees from the bottom of your colony, don't worry that that's a mite count, because those have been accumulating and they may have been groomed off by the bees. We don't know. But they've been accumulating over, weeks in some cases, especially going into winter. So we're looking at bees that have accumulated. These didn't all die in 24 hours, and this is not a meaningful method for counting mites. But I'll tell you what I'm looking for when I show you the close-ups of the mites themselves, and that's going to give me some information about how the bees are handling the mites, how well they're defending themselves. There's a nice fat drone there. And again, no mites on the drone. I did find one Saskatraz worker out of all of these that had a mite on it. And I'm going to show you that near the end. So I'm looking at their wings. This one right here, that's a troubling little rascal. It looks like it might have some disease going on there. And someone pointed out when I showed an earlier picture of that it might have a hole in it, but it's really just a dented thorax. Now I've got some mites left in my Ziploc baggie here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 in this bag. So I'm going to wash those out and show you how I collect them. I use large coffee filters. These are the commercial coffee filters. They're dirt cheap. Water passes right through them. When you do mite counts and you want to dump them out on a membrane that allows you to have a nice contrast and you want to see those mites up close, coffee filters are the way to go. And we're just going to get it here on this colander. I'm going to pour this water right out over the coffee filter, and the water passes through it so fast that you don't lose anything. So there's no wash over on the edges. And when these coffee filters lay flat, they're about 10 inches in diameter. So there's lots of working area here. I'm going to slosh some water around, and I'm going to pour it out on there. We get the bees, we get some mites, and of course it goes transparent while it's wet. But when the coffee filter dries back out, you have a nice white contrast to look at anything you want. But in this case, we're looking for mites. Do a couple rinse cycles because there were a couple stubborn ones in there. I'm going to pour those out too. And again, this works when you're doing your mite counts. In the summertime when it's warm, if you do a sugar roll or something like that, you can dump that right out in water on a coffee filter, rinse it through, and look, you can see the little mites there even though this hasn't dried out. So we did collect quite a few. Now we're going to transfer this to a nice big white plate, and there they are. You can see more of the mites there. So how many do we have? And these were just the ones that were left in the bag. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 mites. And of course we've got some messed up bees. They're not good for much. I can't get much of an evaluation out of that. So now we're set up with a stereo microscope. Part of my job is to photograph the conditions of the bees and the mites, and we're going to do that with macro. That's a macro lens on the camera, but I'm going to pull that lens off, and we're using an adapter for a stereo microscope. Today I'm using a Nikon Z7 body because it has a high pixel count, really well suited to macro micro photography. We're going to put that adapter right on the right optic here of the stereo microscope. And then we're going to use the sunshine coming through the window to light it up. Now you can see on the back monitor screen exactly what we're looking at. So I can take still photos or video sequences. For example, if I came across a mite that was still crawling around, I would definitely video that. But this screen makes it all very easy. And now let's take a look at some of the pictures that we got. So these were from the Saskatraz bees. Now what I wanted to point out about these mites, they're undamaged. That's the worst part of it. Their feet are perfect. The mites, even if they were groomed off, they weren't chewed or bitten by the bees. So that does not impress me much. Compared to this one, which came out of a BeeWeaver colony, look at this mite. He's all chewed up. So when you find the mites from the BeeWeavers, when they groom them off, their feet are gone. Now here's a Varroa destructor mite attached to the abdomen of this worker bee, right there. That mite is perfectly contoured to fit right into that segment and feed off of that bee. Now the following morning, the bees that I had on the plates that I thought were dead, guess what? 3 of them were on my window. And here they are, reaching out to each other. Here's another one walking on the windowsill. And if you look at that left front foreleg, you can see there's a little white bead there. That's how they walk up windows. Here's another one coming over the edge of the coffee filter, showing the mandibles there in an open position the way a guard bee would. Now, if you don't have a microscope, you can use something like these magnifying glasses that come in 3 magnifications, 1 kit, and it really lets you look over the bees carefully. And you can see the mites, you can see their condition pretty good. You can get a 2.5x mag, and there's a 5x and a 16x. So this is the 5x magnification here, and now this one's the 16. So you can actually look at things very closely here. So if you're a mite hunter, or you want to see the condition of the wings, you're concerned about deformed wing virus or something else, magnifying glasses are the next best thing to a microscope. I hope you got something out of today's video, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thank you for watching as always.